once again. Continuing on with our AI system for our enemies, let's hop into our AI folder under blueprints. Let's open up enemy AI. So last episode we added this AI perception here and we selected our dominant sense. But that didn't actually give our character any senses yet. We just picked which one we wanted to use primarily. So to give this enemy a sense, or any enemy using this AI controller, let's click the plus sign next to Senses Config. Now from this drop-down menu, we can select AI Site Config, and you can see here various other things we could use in the future, but right now let's just focus on the first, which is AI Site Config. Now click the drop-down here, and another drop-down here, and you'll see some settings here. So 90 degrees is the angle at which your enemy will be able to see, and that's quite wide. That's essentially immediately to its left and right and straight up and down. So let's drop that down to 45. And then detection by affiliation. So this is a built-in Unreal Engine system that we're not going to use at the moment. So we're going to tick all of these because if we don't tick these two, then it's not going to detect our character when we walk in front of it. Now let's compile and save that, and right click on AI perception to add an event. Let's add on target perception updated. So what this does is tell us what actor the enemy has just seen. So to test this out, we're going to grab ourselves a branch. We'll get player character. And we could potentially just compare these two, but we will also cast to B_hero. We'll turn that into a pure cast. And we will compare these two to see if they are equal. But we're not just going to plug that in. If we just plug this in, the AI is only going to detect entering and exiting. There will be no difference between the two, which means that the player will always be detected by the enemy. So drag out of stimulus, and you might see a familiar node here if you've done any of our previous tutorials. Break AI stimulus. So this is essentially a struct of values built into the system. The only one we want is successfully sensed. So let's get ourselves an AND node because we're going to check for both of these. And we'll plug in those two booleans here. And once we've got that plugged in, we can actually pop over here and hit hide unconnected pins. Clean that up a little bit, even though this is currently more of a test script. We'll plug that branch in there. And then let's grab ourselves two print strings. The first will say, I see you. And the second will say, where you go. I like to avoid using hello in the print string when I can because I might have hello set somewhere else and I won't know which print string is firing. So let's compile and save that over to the test map. Now all of these enemies are facing the same way we're facing. So we're facing forward. So when we dragged these enemies in, they're all facing forward as well. You can see by that little arrow there. So they're 45 degrees from either of these angles will be where those enemies can see us. So let's hit play. That collapse sound is still playing in the back. We'll just ignore it for now. And when I walk into the enemy's radius, he can see me amongst the other test script. And when I walk out of the radius, he says, where'd you go? So we are successfully capturing when the enemy can and can't see us, which is going to be very important for the next piece of script we work on. So as I mentioned in the previous episode, it's up to the AI controller to update the Blackboard for the behavior tree to use. We need to start first by setting our variable inside the Blackboard. So open up the Blackboard. Here we have a self actor. We'll leave that there for now because it comes default. Let's add a new key and it's going to be an object. We're going to call this hero. Selecting hero, we can click the drop down and change that over to an actor. An actor is technically an object, but we won't get too far into that. All we need to do is remember the name that we have here because this name is known as the Blackboard key. And we need to punch that in letter for letter on the other side. So let's save that, go up to AI underscore enemy, get Blackboard. You want under AI get Blackboard here, and we will set object, which will come up with set value as object. So let's get rid of these print strings. And we're going to plug true into set value as object. And the object we will set will be our player character. Like so. And then we will drag out of the key and type in literal, make literal name, and here we will type in hero. So that will speak specifically to the value in our Blackboard. And as we often do, we'll actually change these guys over to a variable. So let's get player character, cast to b underscore hero, and right click on that, call that reference hero, as we have done in many scripts before. And now we can use that hero reference here to try and keep things as clean as possible. So now that will be updated if it's true. But if it's false, we need to clear that Blackboard key. So we will clear the value, and the key name will be that literal name again. So now the Blackboard will be sufficiently updated depending on whether or not the AI can see the hero, which means that we can now make decisions based off of that value. So don't forget to compile and save that. So now let's come over to the behavior tree and see how we're going to implement that Blackboard key. You may remember that I said there were two nodes that we're going to use here out of the root, sequences and selectors. So a sequence will fire a bunch of tasks in succession. A selector will select between two sequences depending on a variable, like so. Let's drag out of the root and select a selector. So now this selector will function first, and whatever's on the left will be what fires unless it's given a condition. Let's take this play sound and drag that over there. And then let's take the test task and take that over there. Just as an example, you don't need to follow along here. It's just going to select the very first task and not move on unless that task fails. So let's get rid of these two guys. We don't need them anymore. We'll also get rid of this sequence and these two weights. So now let's drag out of this selector and get ourselves a sequence. I guess we could have copied over that previous sequence. We'll copy over another sequence too. What we're going to do is right click on a sequence and add a decorator. And this will be a Blackboard value. So this Blackboard value will come up to the top right here, and we will select Blackboard key hero. And we will select this as is not set because the Blackboard key starts empty. It's like the variable over here in our AI enemy. This reference hero technically starts empty, but gets populated almost immediately because of the event begin play pulling off that casting. So this variable here over in our Blackboard starts empty, which means that we can make decisions off of that. So if hero is not set, then this sequence can fire. And then over here, we'll do the opposite. Let's right click, add decorator, Blackboard, and this will be hero is set. So to make a little more sense of this, if the enemy can't see our hero, then this sequence will play, and if the enemy can see our hero, then this sequence will play. So let's go back over to the test map. Let's go into our test task, change this print string to I see you, and we'll compile and save that. Now let's go back over here, right click, duplicate. We'll call this test 2, and we can call this test 1. So there's a difference between the two. And in test 2, we'll change it to where'd you go? Very similar to what we did, compile and save, over here in the AI enemy, except that we're doing it through the Blackboard and through the behavior tree. So now here we'll drag off. So this sequence fires if we can't see. So test 1 was if we can see. Test 2 is if we can't see. So test 2 on the first sequence and test 1 on the second sequence. Just so they don't quick fire, because remember the sequences will repeat each other. We'll drag off of this, add a wait. And we'll wait 5 seconds before we fire again. So let's save that. Over to the test map, hit play. I'm going to walk in front of the enemy. Before I walk in front of him, you can see all of these guys every 5 seconds are firing off the where'd you go. But if I stand in front of this enemy, the next time that happens, this enemy can see me and the rest can't see me. So we get 1 I see you and 1 where'd you go. And if I was to stand in front of this enemy, we get another different I see you, because this enemy is technically in the way. If I was to stand over here, 2 ICUs, 2 where'd you goes, because both of these enemies can see me. So our script is functioning, even though it's just a test script. I'm just trying to make this as simple for you guys to understand. Next time, we're going to actually put something a little more useful than test scripts in these sequences. So I'll see you in the next episode.